Interface segregation principle. Clients should not be forced to depend on interfaces they do not use. It suggests creating smaller, specific interfaces instead of one large, all-encompassing one.
So ISP interface segregation principle, it means you're using the interface, but how do you create the interface like in a good way? Is instead of a large all-encompassing interface. So like it is iWorker, it has a work method, eat method, a sleep method. It is a large and all include all the functionality could be related or not related. Instead of that, you create a smaller specific interfaces like iWorkable, iFeedable, and iRestable. And in this type, like if you have a robot uh, which implements iWorker, if you're not happy with the robot doesn't eat and sleep, so that's not good interface of iWorker. And instead of that, you create smaller interface like iWorkable, so the robot can implement iWorkable, and the robot will not implement iFeedable or iRestable. And so that's when you create your interface, you can use the ISP interface segregation to create a small specific interface instead of a large one. And so you can see the bytecode. You have interface of iWorker, have function of work, function of eat, function of sleep. Then the class of robot implements the iWorker, and I can only overwrite the worker and say print line the working robot. But if the robot because the robot implements iWorker, if we override the function of eat, actually it is throw exception. Or same thing for override the function of sleep and throw exception. Instead of the iWorker, you create iWorkable interface and contain function of work. You create a feedable interface, contain function of eat. You create a restful interface, contain function of sleep. And your class of robot which implements iWorkable, you need only override the function for work, so you print line the working robot. And in this type of how you create your interface is a better way and the bad way. And this is the sample code for bad interface. And follow the ISP, you create a smaller specific interface, iWorkable, iFeedable, iRestable instead of iWorker. And so the client who doesn't need force to depends on the interface that doesn't need it, like iWorkable, it has the function of eat and sleep, which the robot doesn't need it. So yeah, the human need all the iWorkable, iFeedable, iRestable. They can implement all these iWorkable interface and iFeedable interface and iRestable interface. So the robot only need to implement the iWorkable. The key benefits is you got more flexibility. Class implementation only implement the method they actually need. Maintainability, the changes to one interface, smaller interface doesn't affect the unrelated client. And clarity, smaller focused interface are easier to understand and use. And decoupling reduce unnecessary dependency between the components.